garlic has finally arrived, so I can finally get it in the ground. And I've got a special one as well. But garlic last year was absolutely so disappointing because I had loads of problems with it being too wet and it rotted. So I'm going to fix that this year. I'm going to grow it in some pots and troughs and things. Okay, so last year then, very quickly, grew garlic in my raised beds like I normally do. But last year, for some reason, I guess because it was just incredibly wet, not necessarily winter, but right through spring, it was seriously wet. The garlic in the beds just suffered, and I was just pulling rotted stalks away from rotted cloves and bulbs and stuff, and I lost probably about half of what I planted. Ugh, rotted, ugh. Not the end of the world, but I'm not certain they've actually split into clothes. So we shall see. And it wasn't white rot, which is everyone's big fear. It was so wet. Stuff was rotting at the neck, on the stalk, the bulbs. It was just horrendous. Just in one part of the bed. So this year, I'm going to try growing it in containers or pots or planters or whatever you want to call them. Because this way, I can control the drainage and I can move them around. So that's the plan. So what I've done already, as you can see, I'm ready to go. I've got compost from the bins and a little bit that I had left over in the greenhouse, and I've got that mixed into a really good nutritious potting mix. I've got heaps of perlite in there for loads of drainage. I've got a little bit of fish blood and bone in there because I'm not sure how nutritious what I had in the greenhouse is, and garlic and onions, that sort of the allium family, they like a lot of nutrition. So that's all mixed and it's now in these troughs. I suspect I'm also going to need some pots because I've got quite a bit. And here's what I've got. So, this will be the last one I talk about. These two. Gone with a different variety, different company, everything this year, because the people I used to use don't do seed garlic anymore. So, this is from the garlic farm on the Isle of Wight. The majority of folk in the UK, this is where they buy their garlic. So, I have used them before many, many years ago. Can't for the life of me remember what I used though. What I've got this year, 2 different varieties, a couple of bulbs of each, because, you know, I don't have a heap of space for growing it, so I only grow a little bit. I have got Extra Early White and I've got Kingsland White. They're both hard necks. So here's the thing. 2 types of garlic, hard neck and soft neck. The soft neck, they store much, much better, store for much longer. So if you're growing heaps of them and you want to store them for longer, soft neck is great for that. The reason I choose hardneck is because it just copes a little bit better with the climate. So if you're somewhere that's quite cold, hardneck is much better. It will cope with those temperatures. But also, like I say, with us being really wet and quite cold, it just seems to work a bit better. But bonus, hardneck gives you scapes. We are fans of scapes. So scapes basically are when the garlic bulbs start to flower. Usually it's not long before you're going to pick them, but those are gorgeous. You just cut the whole thing right off and you can cook with it, put it in salads, whatever. It's a much more subtle garlicky flavour and we love it. So we actually get more excited about the scapes than the actual garlic sometimes. So hardneck scapes, awesome. I've also got this little one here. Never ever grown before. This is elephant garlic. Now, I didn't buy this. This was sent to us by the lovely Christy Grows, who is one of our fabulous viewers, and she's on YouTube and Instagram and stuff, so her details are below if you want to check her out. But she sent us some of this because she had spares, and I'm quite excited. So I've got a couple of these that are going to be exciting. Okay, bulbs versus clothes. Here's the easiest way to explain it. That's a bulb of garlic. You've recognised this. You probably buy this in your local supermarket. The little bits that it breaks into are the cloves. Now, here's the thing. We don't plant the bulb. We plant the individual cloves. And each of these cloves becomes a bulb. So, one will probably get me 5 or 6 cloves. So you can see how awesome it is. Because of that, a lot of people actually save a few of the cloves rather than eat them, and they'll store them and dry them and keep them till the next season, and that's what they then plant, so they have a continuous supply. Like I say, we don't grow nearly enough to do that, so I end up just buying a bulb or two every year. But there you go. So the first thing I have to do then, I'm going to break these bulbs down into their cloves, and I'm going to take all the little papery skins off, and then I'll get them planted. You guys know me well. I've brought the labels with me because you know I'll plant up and forget to label them, and they all look the same. But also, I've got a couple of trays because it's wet and dirty. That's the only reason. So I'll work in these trays. Right, so Kingsland White. The first thing I'm going to do is label this tray. So here we go, bulbs. That is the hard neck that I was telling you guys about. It's a hard stalk. When you store it, it goes really, really hard, and all the little cloves are around it, and there's all the roots on the bottom, what's called the root plate. That's attached to this stalk. So what we're going to do is split it. Some people can do it in their hands. I usually can't. I'm not strong enough. What I do is just somewhere flat and a little bit of pressure. Not heaps, just enough. You'll hear it click and do that. It just lets you separate it. So we've got all this papery skin that I was saying can go. We're taking that off. And what we want are these lovely cloves. And the root plate can go in the bin. So that stuff's in the bin. Now, you can see why I was saying how awesome it is that you plant one clove and that turns into a bulb, and it gives you all of these. So from that one bulb, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I get 11 cloves. So that's not bad, is it? Few things then. Different people will give you different advice based on their experience. So first thing to do is check through and look for any that just don't look quite right, any that look like they might be rotted or whatever. I've got one there that just doesn't look healthy, so I'm just going to bin that. I'm not risking putting a piece of garlic into my soil that might have any kind of rot or any damage, and there's a chance that it's not going to grow, so it's a waste of space. Other than that, the other thing I've always been told is only plant the big cloves. So if I show you, look at the difference in size here. Okay. So I've always been told to just bin the little ones. There's no point in planting them, just go with the big ones. And I've always followed that advice. Kate's shouting, eat them. However, Steve over at Green Side Up has said he's planted the little ones and got great bulbs out of them. So if I've got space, I might just plant them all this year, just to see. So that's the first sort of bit. The next bit you saw me do was to take this papery skin off. Now, some people will completely take all of it off and get the bulb right down till it's bare. I don't. I take the majority of it off, but I'm not overly fussed about it. So, you know, again, you try it out, see how you got on. I've not had any issues doing it that way. Right, so that's my Kingsland White. Next tray is my Extra Early. Now, Extra Early, I'm quite excited about. Apparently, these should be ready kind of July time, which is quite exciting because normally I have to wait till the end of August for my garlic. So, quite excited. Because it's like everything else. How quickly things grow, all down to your garden, your climate, your temperatures. So I watch folk down south getting all excited and harvesting garlic, and I'm usually a few weeks behind them. So again, whoa, look at the size of that. Check that out. Whoa. If I get stuff that size, I'll be chuffed. Same again. Some folk get a bit worried about planting things like this, but it is this simple. There's a very general rule, and it is your little clothes should be 2 to 3 times as deep as it is in size, okay? So you can imagine that. Pointy end up, And this flat, tough end at the bottom, that's the roots there that will come out that flat end, so pointy end up. And you just want to give them a wee bit of space. Garlic and onions, now the general allium family don't really like neighbours. They're quite antisocial. They don't like other things getting in amongst the roots. So you want to give them about 4 to 6 inches space between them as well. And that's it. All we're doing is into the compost and cover it over. Like I say, it's a rough guide of how deep you want to plant them. Don't get stressed over it. And I'm going to plant them into this kind of zigzag so that I can get as many in here as possible with the space that's needed. See, it's not scary at all, is it? Right, I'm going to need another label because I've got enough for 2. I've got 2 planters of extra early. I'm going to have to go and fill up some more pots because I've got way more than I expected. But, quick one then, before I do that, in the pots and the planters, very, very, very important. I spoke about how I've got really good free drain and potting mix in here. I added lots of perlite and things to it. I've also made sure there are heaps of drainage holes in the bottom of these troughs and in all the pots I'm going to use. Garlic doesn't like sitting in the wet. It likes nice free draining soil. Right, okay, I'm going to get the rest of these all potted up and then I'll show you where I'm putting things. I've got all of these little puny ones left that I wasn't going to bother with. I'm going to shove them in this pot just as an experiment. Will they grow? And if they do, what size bulbs will I get at the end of the year? I've put them between the raised beds because garlic, although garlic is fully hardy here in my garden, so our winters we get usually average down to about -6, -7 is our cold. So these guys will be totally okay here, but they do need full sun. Garlic does need sun to give you the best crop you can get. And I'm a bit lacking on proper sunny spots in this garden, as you guys know, so this is it. But there's a bonus to that. They're out of the way, they're in full sun, they're near the veg beds, so everything's kept together. But because they're in containers, pots, troughs, planters, they're easy to move. So once they start to actually grow, I won't be able to open the nets on my beds because they're on hinges without interfering with the garlic. But those pots are really easy to move out of the way. Also means I can maybe move them to a sheltered spot if we get a really bad rainstorm and I'm worrying about how wet they get. So, bonus. Now the last thing, I know last year you guys saw that I mulched my beds with the garlic in them, and you will hear quite often people telling you about mulching things. Mulching is a very, very good thing to do. I do mulch my beds and I've spoken about this a whole heap, and if you don't know what mulching is, I'll tag a video at the end so you can learn about it. I've got a beginner's guide to mulch. I am not, however, mulching my garlic. The reason being, and again this is about knowing your garden, your climate, your growing conditions, I found that the mulch does its job. It holds the moisture in as well as keeping a bit of warmth in there. Given how wet our winters are, I don't want to hold that moisture in there any longer than need be. That's why things rot in my garden. So I'm not going to mulch. But you know your garden, you do what suits you. If this wasn't enough Eli and Kate in the garden for you guys, then pop over to Robin's container garden because she was here last weekend and she filmed her thoughts on our garden. And I haven't even seen it yet either. So pop over and it's out there now. That is the video all about mulching, so watch that next if you want to know what mulch is and how to use it. And I will see you guys for the next round of gardening fun. See you folks.